Ahlan wa sahlan. Sabal khair. This is the extent of my Arabic. I used to live in Egypt for 5 years, Khamsa Sana, so please excuse the shwaya Arabi. But we're really fortunate. My name is John Eric Bento, the elementary school principal at the American School of Dubai. I am joined by my colleague, associate principal, Deb Straight. And so we're very fortunate to be here in front of you and honored, in fact, as many of the speakers spoke about this morning, to engage in the dialogue and to share. And more than anything, these 6 sessions that have taken place by KHDA has been a great collaboration. I mean, we heard that really as the main theme this morning. And so we really appreciate you taking the time to spend this 30 minutes or so with us to engage in the dialogue, because that's really the way I view this. We're sharing some ideas, and it's not the only idea about literacy for our youngest learners. When we talk about our 4-year-olds, even up to 8-year-olds, this is really the talk that we wanted to share with you. But by all means, it's only one way, not the only way. And so by all means, in terms of our conversation, we are very excited about engaging in that conversation. So just to kind of start off, we are at the American School of Dubai, which formerly was the Jumeirah American School, founded back in 1966 in Jumeirah. And so we are servicing really a North American population of students. We're up to 1,664 currently on the campus in Al Barsha after a move from Jumeirah. In the elementary school alone, we have close to 800 students. And so, even that talk that Dr. Mike Halal was talking about this morning around having teaching teams together, that's something we want to engage in and share with you some of the structures that we have in place to support literacy in, obviously, the kindergarten all the way to grade 2 is kind of the way that we view this in the primary levels. And so just to share some overview of the information, we obviously subscribe to an American curriculum, which we'll be talking about momentarily. Very much so, the literacy piece is based in the Common Core. We'll talk about that in a moment. We also wanted to share with you quickly some handouts around what is a highlight of what we'll be talking about today, and it's really the reading workshop component. We'll be talking about the actual architecture of that throughout this time today, and so we have these handouts for you just to serve as a guide in our conversation today. So, just real quick, when we talk about this mission that we're all here founded on at the American School of Dubai, it says very clearly that we challenge and inspire each student to achieve their dreams and to become a passionate learner prepared to adapt and contribute in a rapidly changing world. This by no means is a small task, and it's certainly not one that we take on our own. We do see the collective work that is obviously collaborating with our colleagues here in Dubai as a measure to help support this work. And so I share that with you just to provide a bit of a context to why we exist in Al Barsha, servicing those 1,600 plus students. It really is with the effort that we are taking the time to spend with you today, as well as hoping to engage, and I shared that with you earlier, this conversation so we can carry that on and forward. Something that really we want to reiterate before we actually get into the actual teaching and learning aspect of the work we do with students is this very, very clear premise that it's ongoing professional development with our teachers that we absolutely subscribe to in order to honor our mission, in order to absolutely model ourselves, the adults, as learners. That's something that is an ongoing piece for our faculty, and it's one that we just need to reiterate that our teachers are continuously learning, and that we ourselves are continuously learning. And so when we talk about that, we subscribe to a model that is the workshop model. It's based out of the Teachers College at Columbia University in New York City. And in many ways, it's something that when we talk about the different components to this, it's about being very explicit about instruction in both reading and in writing. And we'll be getting, really, in many ways, you see kind of the artifacts that we have up. We'll be getting to talk to you about how we do this with our 4-year-olds all the way up to 8. We actually do continue this further into the elementary, the intermediate years as well. But when we consider what is the work of helping to train our teachers, we make sure that through the Teachers College at Columbia University, those institutes, they have both reading and writing workshop institutes that we make sure to engage our faculty in professional development opportunities. It also comes in hand that through our organization that we belong to, it's called NISA, the Near East South Asia Organization of Overseas Schools. It's a council of overseas schools that we belong to. It's through this group that we also maintain this professional development plan. Wanted to just share that with you real quick, just so you see, just through those websites that we're talking about this work. So. So this is out of TC, Teachers College. This is a major resource. Just I wanted to share that with you in terms of the professional development opportunities that can be afforded to many schools all over the world. In fact, already is. This is in many ways the opportunities that are afforded to our teachers here, either through the NISA organization or through Columbia University. Another component to this is really not just sending our teachers off for training into New York in Manhattan. It is really a matter of also finding ways to bring consultants to the school to really make sure that there's an ongoing professional development plan there. And so when we say that, we talk about that as a component that is folks working alongside our teachers while in the actual craft of teaching. And so when we talk about literacy coaches or numeracy coaches, these are folks that we absolutely rely on to help support our work consistently throughout the year. Another piece that you'll see here is that those teams that Dr. Mike Halal actually talked about today with Patty's research, we make sure that we have grade level literacy lead teachers at each of those grade levels to support the ongoing work that is helping to mentor our teachers as well as support the curriculum development that is taking place at those grade levels. Okay, so just wanted to share the structure first around all the work that is making sure to address our teacher professional development, something just to reiterate that our teachers are learning all the time. Okay, so let's get into the teaching and learning aspect of it.
Morning, we're glad that you were able to join us today. I think one of the most difficult pieces for us was to decide what can we share about literacy that works well at ASD in a 30-minute time, because we could talk for days and days and days. It's a true passion at ASD, literacy and learning for students. So as John Eric shared with you, one of those really major components is the ongoing professional development and the support that we provide teachers on a daily basis through their leads and again through the consultants and also the outside workshops that they attend. But taking all of that and implementing in the classroom, that's where that real theory meets the road. And so one of the really strong components of, we feel, the successes at ASD is that students are actively engaged every day, all day long in their learning. When students are actively engaged, they become responsible for their learning and they become independent learners. So in ASD classrooms daily, students are engaged in a variety of activities that each have a very distinct purpose, but require and expect that students are actively engaged. One of those is their whole group work. This happens, again, all of these happen daily. These happen usually at the beginning of lessons, at the closure of lessons, or at midpoints in their lessons. At the beginning of lessons, it's a mini lesson, and it's a 10-minute lesson on a very specific skill that's going to be taught for that day in that subject area. Midway through, they may bring the students back to the carpet or back to their tables to kind of do a check-in, how's it going, and a sharing time, and then at the end of the lesson, bring them all together for a closure. Small group work is known as there's small group work and there's learning stations. Both of those are small groups of students. The small group work is guided by the teacher, and it's a teaching time where the teacher, using the data that she's collected, knows this group of students need these skills at this time, so she or he pulls them together. Where the learning centers are, again, small groups, but they're mixed ability groups. And in those groups, they're practicing skills that they have either learned that day or the last couple days or a week. Skills and strategies that the teacher really feels they need more practice. So that's the learning centers and the small group work, both being small group but very different purposes for that work. Then there's partnerships. The partnerships are very strategic partnerships, the teacher knowing the students very well will arrange partnerships so that students have an opportunity to practice not only the skills and strategies, but they will also be practicing their listening, their speaking, and their questioning. If they're going to be working together in either a reading or a writing setting to really refine and fine-tune their skills and strategies. And as we know, you learn when you are helping someone or teaching someone, that depth of understanding is even more. So those partnerships are very important. They're not random partnerships. And then there's the independent work time. And during that independent work time is when students get to work by themselves and really can focus on their needs and how they're solidifying skills. And at that time, the teacher or the instructional assistant would be conferencing with students. So they're always gathering that data. Okay, so that's one component we thought was very interesting to share with you is that active engagement.
And that's truly the learning by doing, actually giving time for students to actually practice those strategies and skills.
When instruction is explicit, purposeful, and intentional, that's when you see students' growth and students' understanding grow exponentially. And so our teachers are very in tune to what the needs of the students are, because there's those very perfect times that you know it's to teach a skill or to not teach a skill. And so the teachers really need to know their students. And that understanding comes from those ongoing assessments, those anecdotal notes, the conferencing, the running records, and the rubrics that we use. And from all the data that they gather through that ongoing assessment, once they analyze that data, then they're able to choose those skills and strategies that are best for that time for those either individual students or groups of students. But they also always align to our Common Core standards. So that is our benchmark measuring of student growth. Okay.
So when we talk about this, specifically being clear with that 1 or 2 teaching point method of the strategies or skills that we want students to actually acquire in either a reading capacity or in a writing capacity. So that's the explicit and the direct nature of it all. I think the second component to this is the piece where it is ongoing formative assessment that's helping to drive what the next lesson is going to be for students. And so that piece around, well, I have a plan and I'm just going to teach my students this and I'm going to my next plan tomorrow based on whatever I hope that they've learned. No, it's backing that up to really understand the very explicit nature of what this perhaps group of kids may need versus this other group of students. And so it is really being extra clear, as well as thinking about that individualized, differentiated approach to what a child may need in their own learning plan for reading or writing. Okay?
I'm sure you could think back of times when you were sitting in classrooms and everybody received the same information and you maybe already knew it and you thought, well, okay, but I already know that. Or everybody received the same information and you weren't at that point to be able to take that in and internalize that. And so away it went, but it never came back. And so then you began to get these gaps. That's where that ongoing assessment helps you hone that in. And if you don't need this skill lesson, but you do, then you get that lesson, but you get a different lesson. So it's really optimizing students' learning time.
More challenging.
Yeah. And then the fourth component we thought would be interesting to share with you is resources. And we really view resources in 3 different areas. There's the materials, all the things that we have. But then there's also the human resource. And there is that resource of time. And all 3 of those are important to a successful literacy program. So first we'll talk about the material resources. In our classrooms, we have classroom libraries, which are very similar to a school libraries or public libraries that have a variety of genres in the classrooms, and they're not leveled. They are really that opportunity for children to love books just for the sake of loving books, and to take the skills that they're learning and apply them to a book that maybe they can't read all the words in that, and that's okay. But just really being able to take what you know and applying as much as you know to the text that you have. And so that, the purpose of our classroom libraries is, again, just to build that rich love for reading and learning. The classroom libraries, as you can see in the picture, they're in tubs, and those tubs are different genres depending on the grade level. So it could be an Eric Carle tub or a Dr. Seuss tub. It could be specific authors. It could be a math tub, and in there might be books about patterns. There might be books about addition and subtraction. There also could be books on specific subject areas that is specific to that grade level. Then we have level libraries, which have a very different purpose than the classroom libraries. And the level libraries are books that are set with very distinct purposes and very distinct skills and strategies in those books. And so students work through and practice the skills that the teachers teach, as we talked about in those small groups. The teacher teaches the skill, and then the children pick from those very distinct levels books to practice the skills the teacher has taught. So they are books that the children are able to read with maybe only one or two mistakes. They're very, early on, they're very picture rich. As they get older, the pictures become less and the print becomes more. But I wouldn't put a 5-year-old in a book that has no pictures because they're not ready for that level. So the levels also build on each other. So the level libraries are really that instructional, the hard work of reading, where the classroom libraries are that joy and that love and that natural application of the skills that they're learning in those leveled libraries. Other resources we have are big books, recorded books, the magnetic or the movable letters. In writing, we have different paper types, different mediums, tools to use in the writing. All of that really makes that literacy block a very independent and individualized program for students. And then another really important part, as you can see around the room, are our anchor charts. These are developed with the teacher and the students during that whole group carpet time that we talked about. And so these start with just the title, and as the teacher teaches her teaching points, they add the pieces to the charts. So these are second grade charts on this side, and then we have kindergarten and then first grade charts. So you can kind of see the developmental difference. Once these are developed as a whole group activity, then they're hung up and they're used as a reference for students, again, really supporting that independence and that responsibility for their own learning. That they don't have to go to the teacher and say, I forgot how reading partners are supposed to be at reading partner reading time, and the teacher can just refer them to the chart. So again, optimizing that teaching time, where the teacher isn't having to reteach something to a few because they have the resource there. But it's also, there's ownership because they have created these with the teacher. So the room becomes an atmosphere of their learning environment, and there's ownership in that. Our second resource is the human resource. And in all of our primary classrooms, we have one instructional assistant with every teacher. And in those classrooms, the instructional assistant is teaching small groups. She or he may be working one-on-one. They may be teaching whole group activities. In those one-on-one situations, they're conferring. They're doing the exact same things that the teacher is. There's a training between the teacher and this instructional assistant, where initially they will just sit and watch that teacher, listen to those questions, listen to those that dialogue that the teacher has, so that they really sound, when you walk into rooms, they sound the same. And the expectations are the same. So there's really a partnership that's developed between the instructional assistant and the classroom teacher to really optimize, again, student learning. And then our third resource is the resource of time. we have in our schedules very intentionally provided all of our teachers with 60 minutes of reading and 60 minutes of writing every day. In addition, there is a 30 to 45 minute time for word study. And so, knowing that you only have so many hours in a day, you have to make those intentional choices of where does that time go. At ASD, we've chosen to really provide our teachers with 120 minutes, and it's not like you have 30 minutes and then maybe you go to PE and then come back and you have 10. They're uninterrupted blocks of 60 minutes.
And in many ways, setting up the structure in your school around the 420 minutes, if you run from an 8 a.m. to a 3 p.m. time block, it's a limited time. Time is a resource with this, right? And so it is what you value in many ways, that time that you spend, and a lot for students to actually get to dive deep into a literacy component, a balanced literacy component. And so when we say that 120 minutes is in many ways sacred, it is. It's untouchable. It's a non-negotiable time element in our structure, and it's something that we absolutely believe you have to commit to that time in order to obviously make sure that we get the results that we want from our students. Just another added piece is these anchor charts in many ways it's the extra adult in the room. It helps to support children in their learning. They have a reference point. They remember the lesson that they actually helped to engage with in putting those green cards up for the reading partners. They were part of that conversation. So they recall that when they look at that anchor chart to say, yep, that's exactly the way I need to approach when I am sitting with my partner and I'm reading together. Whether it's through that or very explicit strategies in uncovering meaning and for comprehension in reading, those are those components that absolutely, when we have a print-rich or an illustration, picture-rich classroom, this helps to assist in that very intentionally as well. Let's get to some learning.
Yeah. So now we've talked about active learning and active engagement, but we've been doing the talking. So what we like to do is really have you participate in a very short active learning activity that our teachers use, if not on a daily basis, every other day. This activity can be done in other content areas. It doesn't just have to happen in literacy. But what we're going to ask you to do is an activity that's called the Turn and Talk. Are any of you aware of Turn and Talks? Okay. What you will do is, we have a question here, and you're going to think about how you would respond to that question. And I'll give you just a little bit of time just to kind of process that. And then I'm going to ask you to turn to an elbow partner, which is someone that's sitting close to you. If, like this is a group of 5, if we have 2 here, we can put 3 together. Or we can, these are not going to be strategically chosen partnerships right now. And then what you will do is you're going to share your thoughts of this question with your partner. But your job is to listen to what your partner says, because you are then going to share what your partner said with a new partner. Okay? So, since we have the lovely bell, we had the lovely bell. That's okay. But since we had the bell, we would use that. So I'll give you a short amount of time, and then I'll just clap a couple times. That means come back this way so that we can move forward. So what also I've shown you now is how a teacher would explicitly explain to students, this is what we're going to do, and the cue to come back. Okay? All right. So, are everybody ready to give it a try? Give it a go? Yes. Okay. So this is your question. What do you do as a reader to make meaning? So first you're going to think by yourself, no conversation with anyone else. What do you do to make meaning out of reading? Okay, now I'm going to have you turn to a partner, an elbow partner, which is someone that's close to you, and you're going to share what you do as a reader to make meaning. Listen carefully to your partner, because you will share what your partner said with a new partner. Okay, when you hear the bell, face back this way. Okay? Okay, go ahead. Has everyone had a chance to share with their partner? Okay, you remember what your partner told you? Okay. Now it's going to have you share what you just heard from your partner with a new partner. Okay, so it can't be anyone that you've been with, someone different, okay? So it'd be behind you, it could be across the aisle, but find a different person, okay? Go ahead.
So is it Lee? James, how are you? Eric, yeah, nice to see you. How's everything going? Yes, this is it, right? Sure. How long have you been in? Okay, 1 week. Fantastic. Very good. So what's your role now? 6 weeks. Yeah, no doubt.
It would be good. Okay. So now what did you notice that when you were talking, John Eric and I were moving around? We didn't maybe engage in your conversations, we may have, but we were just being a listener. And so that's another strategy the teachers are using, they're gathering that data. They're making those notes, yep. These kids knew exactly what to do. They were right on target. I hear they're saying, what do good readers do when they read? They were listing them off. They knew. So again, it was actually an assessment, we could do an assessment of the students' understanding of what good readers do when they read. How do you get reading from print? Okay, so now so the teacher was moving around, but you also not only had your strategy, but you had a strategy from another person and a strategy from another person. So now you can walk away from this activity that took us less than 5 minutes with 3 strategies to now go to your independent work or your partner work, and now you re-engage that prior knowledge to make that independent reading time a very valuable, efficient use of learning time. Okay?
So I heard very clearly from a group over here about how they visualize when they read. What other strategies were you able to pick up just in this conversation today? Just share. Anything came up? Anybody have any of their new learnings for today? Yes.
I love the idea of acronyms.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. So from that, then you've had your learning, and then as you open it up to the whole group, everyone has an opportunity to be engaged, as opposed to when you have the whole group and you say, okay, think about your learning, think about how you read. Okay, you tell me one, you tell me one, you tell me one. Well, there's almost 80 people in here, but only 3 people's learning have been activated. Everybody else is a passive learner. So this activity made everyone naturally be engaged in the question that was asked. Okay? All right. Are there any questions?
We have about 3 minutes. But by all means, we wanted to be available to answer any of these questions for you, first in big group, before we dismiss in 3 minutes. Anyone have questions for me?
So you send your teachers for training over there?
Yes, so in the summertime, there are institutes, they're called the Summer Institutes. So there'll be a writing institute offered twice over the course of, I think it's 6 days, it's about a week. And a reading institute, again. So there's targeted 4 sessions of this. At the same time, someone just asked this question as well. We're very fortunate through this NISA organization that actually Lucy Calkins has actually come to the region to present. And so in many ways we're fostering a partnership with Teachers College and Columbia University to help support this training that's taking place obviously here in the UAE, but also all over the world. And so yes, it's through Teachers College.
Can anybody contact us through their website or something?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's an application process. It's albeit short, just answering a couple essay questions based on why you are a good candidate to be taking this class. Oftentimes just being a teacher and being able to speak from the heart around that will get you.
3 years ago, there were 2 associates whose classes they came and did a writing, 3 or 4 day writing, and they were in Dubai. So they do sometimes come to Dubai, not very often. Yeah.
There's another question that I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
What about trainers, like the CPD and stuff like that? Do you invite people and if yes, where do you invite them from?
All over the world, really. I mean, I think when you
Any
consider,
particular organization?
well, did you see that I shared the Common Core piece? Common Core state standards in the United States is a huge movement around really adopting some Common Core standards around literacy and numeracy are the 2 that we're focused on. And so through this really work in the States, there's a lot of great trainers that are coming out. And so we position ourselves in a math capacity, for example, with somebody that has done some of this work in the States, to do some work with our teachers around mathematics. And so, I mean, it is really aligned to these standards, very much so, and making sure that we're not looking at a resource to drive the teaching of the standards that we're addressing with our students, but really those Common Core state standards.
What's your average classroom size?
About 20, 22, we'll go up to as much, but it's 20 is really where we try to target our numbers. And in the lower grades, so even in the pre-K, in the kindergarten, we're looking at the 16, 17 number, but in the upper, it's around the 20. Yes.
So do you use
هذا عدد مع الشخصية
Or if you heard that question, it was asked if we're using any particular resources as a basal leader of some sort. No, we do not. We stick to the trade books and we subscribe to this approach. Really. So there's units of study that we approach the various units in terms of writing genres as well as reading, and that's the approach that we take, using different types of literature.
Session is over. We'll be here.